Welcome, everyone. My name is Ekaterina. I'm co-founder of Future London Academy, and welcome to another conversation about leadership, creativity, and business. Three things that we are very passionate about, and I am so excited to introduce our guest today, wonderful Sam Bompass. You might have heard of Sam Bompass and Bompas and Parr as one half of Bompas and Parr through all the incredible projects that they do in a wild, weird, and wonderful world of experiences, creativity, and food. Bompas and Parr is a creative marketing and experiential agency that has been around for almost 20 years now and has been creating experience for big brands like Diageo, as well as governmental and cultural organizations and institutions like V&A. And Sam has been running this company together with his partner, Harry, throughout all this time. So I'm very excited that today we will have conversation about weird and wonderful things of ideas, inspiration, creating a culture of creativity in a company, as well as how to turn your weird idea or passion into the actual business, creative business that will have a team, will have projects, will have clients that will trust you with all the ideas and budgets that they have. Welcome, Sam. How are you doing?
Very, very well, and so excited to be here with you and the very, very talented folks here. So looking forward to a lively session.
Brilliant. Well, I'm very excited because today's conversation, I feel like, will be very special. On one hand, we will be talking about things that we love, like how to grow a company from a creative idea, how to deal with all the creative challenges that design and creative leaders have. On another hand, you work in a most bizarre world that sits in the intersection of food, experience, architecture, taste, smell, futures. So this will be a special session for me to get inspiration about what next, but also for everyone who is listening today about where the world is going and where we can find extra inspiration. So for people who maybe are not familiar with incredible and extraordinary experience that they do, can you give an example of something, whether your favorite or recent, that you've done that kind of combines all these wonderful senses?
Well, thank you very, very much. I guess we started off making jelly. I had this out from a meeting that I had earlier. This is not a jelly; it's actually resin, but it gives you a sense of it. And I think jelly has a lot of limitations. People think it's going to be vast, but make jellies too much bigger than this. You have to put so much gelling agent in them that it tastes like a rubber bouncy ball. So because of some of the problems inherent in it, we started looking at how you can really design for all the senses. Weirdly, even though we started off making jelly 20 years ago, I'm still drawn back to it. If I see a jelly on the menu, I'll always eat it, because I think if you taste someone's jelly, you can know a lot about their approach to food, their food philosophy, and what their palate is like, because it's really a vector for any flavor. But yeah, there's sort of wonder. I like finding wonder in even a very singular element, like, what could be quite random as jelly, but it echoes back across this, running a studio for 20 years, and every 7 years or so, jelly becomes really hot. It tends to coincide with media innovations. So when we're starting, we're working in the world of traditional media, so newspapers, and jelly works quite well in print media. Then you start getting sort of Instagram coming through. Jelly works quite well on Instagram, on when it was originally just stills media. And definitely, it works pretty well on TikTok as well, because it's got a wobble. Normally a food moves on your plate. It's a bit alarming. Jelly, it's delightful.
I mean, the story of jelly is a fascinating story, how you can start with something seemingly random and actually grow the whole company out of it. I personally was introduced to one of your experience through a Tesco experience, which was an incredible, immersive, multi-room sensation where each room would, and Tesco, for those of you who are not based in the UK, is a grocery store, a supermarket brand, and Bompas and Parr did this installation experience where you would go in each room and will represent different ingredients and foods that you can buy in the supermarket, whether it was a room filled with bubbles made of champagne, and you could literally catch and eat a bubble that actually is champagne bubble in the air, which is bizarre. There was a room with mushrooms and where they were growing in this incredible light, and it was very mysterious with a very sensorial feeling of smoke and forest and logs lying around. So it was very memorable and very unexpected from a brand like Tesco that is a wonderful grocery store, but definitely showed an experience of food and our relationship with food in a completely different way. So can you tell a bit?
I was going to say, for those in Britain, this was Tesco's finest, not just for the supermarket, it was the celebration of their premium range. They were doing something a little bit
It
extra.
definitely felt premium. But I heard that you talk about luxury as something that is for everyone. It's not just for selected few. So I like your approach in general of creating experience, creating something extraordinary, but something that will be for public or for a lot of people to experience and have this special memory. So definitely was aligned with this feeling of something special and luxurious, but very much accessible and intriguing for anyone who would go through it.
Yeah, I think sometimes we see ourselves as a Robin Hood of culture, and if we do it right, we're able to work with brands who have substantive budgets, take that and do something delightful that doesn't cost people a lot, but involves in that case flavor rainbows with lasers and all sorts of other things.
It was so Instagrammable, by the way. Speaking of social media, I think my photos from that experience were some of the best by color and texture and just in general feeling. So it was very well made. So let's go back to the origin story. You mentioned the jellies, and what I like about your story is that you pivoted multiple times throughout building this company. You started with a product, then you went into services, experiences, and now you're into strategy. So can you tell a bit more about this development as a naive 20-year-old creative pair who decided to do something? How did you get from this idea to winning your first client? Because it's not something that's very easy when you start something new. You don't have any track record, you don't have experience. How do you try to make money with a wonderful and wild idea that you have as a creative?
I think we're lucky that in that instance we didn't need a business plan. And maybe it was quite helpful, because if we'd had one, we would have seen it as being completely ludicrous and wouldn't have done anything at all. It would have been paralyzing. Yeah, when I was in my early 20s, myself and my business partner known each other since we were 13, but we've been in business since our early 20s. We wanted to do something to fill the gaping chasm of the weekend, not just going out and partying and drinking, but creating as well. And Jelly held the key to that. We very swiftly moved from Jelly into full service catering, and from that into full choreography of events. And that was, again, probably not from any design, but naivety, I think, is the word. And I think it can give you a lot of energy to start with. But yeah, so we landed on Jelly because at the time it was the epicenter of historic English cooking and British cooking. And, now food in London and across the UK is very good. At the time, it was, it was a punchline. It was derided globally and universally as being pathetic. But historically, Britain had very, very good food, and the one thing that French food dominated the 20th century in Western Europe. Britain just had its jelly. That was the thing that was good. So it was worthwhile looking at. And at the time, molecular gastronomy was real hot. So we thought that someone like Heston Blumenthal put jelly on one menu 12 times. Now, I think 12 courses of jelly is excessive, even though I'm an enthusiast. But, within that, we're always looking to business, even from the start. And Innocent, which is now owned by Coca-Cola, was a darling of British culinary innovation. And they're making smoothies. It's now a global company. But at the time, they were seeing as real sort of disruptors, real outsiders, very independent. And we thought, well, actually, we could sort of probably do what they're doing, but just with a bit of gelatin. It's going to be genius. We're going to turn, and we can sell it for even more, because it's not just a juice; it's a dessert. So you get to charge premium prices. It's now taken us almost 20 years, and we've now just about to have those products as Benham and Froud, which is good. So sometimes it's okay to be diverted, I think.
So when you realize that maybe creating a product is not going to be your strategy going forward, and you pivoted to doing events and experiences, how did it come about? And also, how what was your first client? How did you make money for the first time through all these weird and wonderful things that you were doing?
Because of some of the challenges with jelly that I was talking about, we wanted to make jellies in different forms. There's another jelly here. And we couldn't afford the molds that we wanted to use, the historic molds. We've now got very extensive, beautiful copper mold collection. And we've also scanned a lot of the molds of like the heritage properties around Britain. So like Castle Drogo has this fantastic mold collection. To get it in a 3D scanner and then grow through electroform baths and all their different molds, which is such a cool thing to be able to do. But we couldn't afford it. So my business partner, who's an architect, used his practice in terms of CAD design, 3D printing, and then vac forming, so quite old technology, to make the sorts of molds that we wanted to do. Because we wanted to push our practice and really challenge ourselves, we invited any architects to design jellies, and then we would make them for them. And then because we managed to persuade people like Rochester Harbour, Grimshaw's, Foster's to design jellies, we put on a big event. And putting on a big event, we charged people a fiver, 2,000 people bought tickets. Suddenly, we had £10,000 in the bank, and we're off to the races. We had a business. I quit my then job, which was working in property PR. Yeah, we started a business, and it's been great ever since.
And at that point, did you feel like you would do events as your main business? I like that your story is very organic, how it evolved. I wonder at which point there were strategic decisions versus just kind of going with the flow and following your curiosity and creativity. Was at that point clear for you that events maybe will be just one part of the business, but everything else will evolve around more service offering? Or what did you think back then?
So at that point, we were kids with tools, and we weren't sure whether we're an artistic practice and we're just making, or we're doing events, or we're creating ideas. Most of the time, we didn't have any clients. And so the way we'd make money is put things on that people wanted to come to and would pay us for. And that's a really good goad to creativity, sort of creativity by brute necessity, and just involved a hell of a lot of risk taking. We'd put the totality of the contents of our bank account on whatever project that we were working on and have to sell tickets. So it means that you really start evaluating what it is that you're doing. In hindsight, it was incredibly risky and terrifying, but we were young enough not to be scared of it, and again, naive enough not to be scared of it. Of course, now we have very extensive business strategies, playbooks, and provide those sorts of services for many other people. But that's built up of many years of learning through doing, which is a good way to do it. It's also a good way to get a lot of feedback if we're put on an event. For example, built a chocolate waterfall, and this is chocolate waterfall flowing at about 4,000 litres an hour. It was spectacular. It was really rather remarkable. You could smell it from a block away. It's churning through all this chocolate. Now, chocolate is hellish to work with at a vast scale. It was very hard work for our studio. And while we'd built this chocolate waterfall, we hadn't fully designed a very detailed visitor journey. So your visitor experience was about 15 minutes. Now, that's normally too short for a visitor experience, but we didn't know it at the time. We're like, we've built a chocolate waterfall. Come see our waterfall. And you very quickly, and we're only charging £5 for it. It's not a huge amount, but very quickly learned that if you haven't considered totally the visitor experience, you'll get some people, especially if you're working with codes like chocolate waterfall, which is very Willy Wonka coded, you'll get people coming out saying, "Where were the Oompa Loompas?" And and we're sitting there going, "So we've built a chocolate waterfall. What do you want, Oompa Loompa?" Now we have more care with how we might approach creating that. I think it is still very important to continually be rolling the dice.
I wondered if were there any moments during the early stage, because as you said, right now you're kind of more strategic, you understand business, you already learned from the mistakes. During those early years, were there any near-death experiences where you actually questioned if this is even a business? What are we doing here? Should we go back to our full-time jobs or just do something completely different? Or you had like the strong conviction this is going to work out no matter what?
I mean, I've never felt that. I think that comes about because before this, I really liked my job. I was doing communication strategy for estate agents and property developers. I come up with lots of ideas, they'd be rejected. And then I got to run a business in which people would seek us out for ideas that they didn't know what they'd be, but they knew they wanted them. So these great open briefs. And also, if we can't find a client to work with on something, we'll just do it ourselves because, what's the meaning of life? So I've never had that. But there was a moment after, again, a chocolate-related incident. We've made a giant chocolate-based climbing wall. Two things that shouldn't be put together, chocolate and giant climbing wall. It was like 10 meters in height with chocolate flowing over this giant chocolate bar. And Peter Andre, the musician, overcame his fear of heights by mountaineering up this thing. But, there was almost a chocolate emergency as some of the chocolate overflowed and started going towards a precious ornamental lake. And if it had reached the lake, there could have been an algal bloom that had interfered with the fish. And thankfully, at this theme park, they had a hazmat team that came out and mopped up the errant chocolate near disaster. After this, my business partner, Harry, we were driving back in the van because we had another project to go to. He said, "You've ruined my life." And I was like, this is so awesome that these are the challenges that we're working with. Of course, we designed that out. And we spent a lot of time looking at how we design risk out of what would be risky experiences. We've done things like making the New Year's Eve fireworks show for London. So you have a live audience of 250,000 people. When you have 250,000 people, statistically, over an evening, especially one that's very high in excitement, one of those people will die from natural causes. So you go into an event of that scale and you've not only planned for what happens if there's any risk to injury, but you also plan what happens if someone has died in the event, and you've already written all your media statements, and which is quite extraordinary. Happily, that hasn't happened for us, but there's a lot of qualified first aiders on our team.
Wow, that's such a complexity you have to deal with. Apart from the creative complexity, just the pure logistical and operational complexity. That's mind blowing.
Well, when you deal with food, you're dealing very intimately with people's safety and their comfort. So it's part of the hospitality industry is making sure that people leave hopefully in a better state than they arrived.
Have you ever felt like, why did I choose a very difficult industry? Why don't we do something beautiful, experiential, which is not food? So there are less regulations, they're less dangerous, like you can apply creativity to something else, or you just love food so much that it's like, no matter what, I want to keep doing that.
Well, I would challenge that. I don't think anyone works in an industry which they go like, you know what, this is really easy, because everyone has a certain degree of capacity. I think every industry has its challenges and its rewards. The joy of food is everyone's an expert. Everyone's got an opinion. It's incredibly democratic. Everyone can be really good at it, but also, and that's challenging, but it's also great because it's easily relatable.
It's working, and you've proved that even in a very difficult industry with very difficult and complex ideas, you can still make them work. You can still make impossible possible and make the magic happen. And on top of that, make a business and living out of it, and grow the team and grow projects and find new incredible opportunities to deliver something even beyond what you've done before.
But there's endless areas. I mean, just take wine. Like, how many masters of wine are there? It's a fraction. Like, the learning is really forever.
Well, let's talk about that.
There's always something interesting to be uncovered.
The creativity and inspiration, because it does feel like it's endless. Every time you put on another experience, another product, event, or anything else, it does feel like it's something completely different from what you've done before. So tell us about your approach to creativity inspiration. First of all, where do you personally find it, or where do you encourage the team to find it? And then how does it come together in the studio into something that becomes tangible?
I mean, to start off with the city, we're lucky to live in London. London is a phenomenal city. It's pretty damp at the moment. People live in relatively small houses for the privilege of living in this city because it's unbelievably expensive. But it thrusts together people in close proximity of all sorts of interesting characters, and I think as a consequence, it's just a hubbub of possibility. I think this year the theatre world is doing so well that it's sold 7 million more tickets than Broadway. So more theatre tickets are sold in London than anywhere else on the planet. Again, we touch many industries in terms of what we do. So deep into hospitality, the food scene here is a riot. I had an absolutely nerve-wracking experience at the end of last year. I do quite a lot of work with the British government about how we present ourselves internationally, and food's a really important way. Great wine is made in Britain, and I was invited to go and host the first tasting of British wine in Paris. And I said yes. And then I realized, oh my God, I'm presenting British wine to French sommeliers who have deep expertise, who spent a lifetime becoming expert in this. And this is just one of the arenas that we look at. But I think one of the things that's interesting is because they've got such great produce in France that if you see their wine list, they're very deep in French wine, but they don't go very deep in wines outside of France. Whereas here in Britain, we have by necessity had to have a lot of different wines and spirits and alcohols from many other places, and I think that makes it interesting. So, creative process really starts off with engaging with London. Making one of the best things I've ever done for my business is buy everyone in the business membership in the Museums Association. It took me about 18 years to find it. Business membership was really cheap. If you run a business in the UK, you get free access to all the exhibitions for about 900 museums. So it means that I think in the first day that I had membership to the Museum Association, I went to Tate Modern. I went to every single exhibition they had. So I think I earned back what I'd spent on membership for my entire business. Just the bonanza, the frenzy of seeing culture in that first day. But yeah, so it's really using the city as a vehicle for a froth of possibility, both in terms of connection and all the rest of it. There's also behind us, we've got there's. It's just a load of boxes at the moment. It's stuff. We've got a huge library here. It's really extensive. I try and get everyone to use it. If you look at stuff online, you end up looking at the same stuff as everyone else. Books are handy.
I love this encouragement for the team to go to museums and actually, in general, go outside into London and into the city. And museums is just a good occasion to travel somewhere and to see something, because you'll see so many things on the way to the museum, as many things you'll see in the museum and the exhibition, but also just the creativity that London attracts. I 100% agree with you. It's something so special. So how do then you...
I was in Ekaterina. I was going to the National Gallery today for a meeting, and on my way there, I bumped into the guy who scares the pigeons, and he had two hawks on his arms, and I had a conversation with him, and I got to meet these incredible birds of prey. And then in the background, there's one cheeky bald pigeon who is provoking them, swaggering back and forth. And it meant I went into this meeting with the gallery just ebullient with the wonder that there is to discover just there, and hoping to embody the pigeon's energy.
That's what I really admire about you, Sam, that you have this joyful attitude and curiosity to life that feels just never ending. You see wonder in everything around you. And it is such an important skill that I feel as creatives, we sometimes lose by making it our job to be creative. And how do you keep it alive, just this general sense of wonder? Because two people can go to the same museum and one will come out absolutely inspired and mind blown by everything they've seen, and another person will be like, nah, it was okay. So how do you practice this sense of wonder?
I mean, I think one of the things that's really important, and we're interviewing for a number of different roles at the moment, and one of the things I'm always most interested in is what people are genuinely excited about. And it's the number of people that come through the door that you ask them that, and they find it difficult to answer. And it sort of doesn't really matter what people say. They could be into bell ringing or bowling or dancing, as an obscure sort of dance. It's just as long as people are interested in anything and have the capacity to be interested in anything very deeply, that's exciting, and that brings a new energy to the studio soup and new possibilities. So I try to do that in my own practice all the time, and sort of getting into trouble, setting yourself with deadlines. And we're opening a Shakespeare museum in a couple of years, and I really wanted to be the only museum which like Shakespeare had a single piercing. And that was quite weird because there's only about 50 years at the time when men had piercings. And I've subsequently learnt that in Britain, having like at the moment, about 83% of people have a piercing, but that only really started with the Queen Elizabeth I wedding. Before that, you'd have clip-on earrings. And because she wanted to, and it was seen as like real bad taste if you had pierced ears, but she wanted to wear some of the massive royal jewelry, that there was no way you could have this royal jewelry as a clip-on. The only way it'd stay on, because the diamonds are so bloody big, was if you had a piercing. So she pierced her ears, and because she pierced her ears, it became okay too. But because I wanted to give everyone an ear piercing, this future museum that doesn't exist yet qualified for that to give ear piercings only a couple of weeks ago, and that's been completely fascinating. Also, that in terms of business development, and I have clients come to the studio and I talk about their budget proposals the next year while putting a sterilized needle through their ear. It's very intimate. You get a lot of truth. You're very close up. It's a new business strategy that I hadn't quite imagined.
Very experimental.
But of course, it's quite far down your normal business funnel of creating possibilities.
Well, first of all, so many great references and stories, and I always feel like you can pull them out of your hat. Like no matter what the conversation is about, you know the history, you know the art, you know everything that is happening. How did you learn all of these kind of side things, and especially history? I feel like you draw a lot of inspiration from historical events and facts. Where does this come from, and do you still learn history, or where do you go for this historical inspiration as well?
Well, as I said, we've got this very extensive library, and after researching lots of different competing shelf marking systems, we've had to go for the Dewey Decimal System, which is so problematic, but like just so much easier to use than a lot of other shelf marking systems that you get into it. But where this is going is the books within it. There'll be a shelf mark for death. There'll be one for dueling. There'll be a lot, of course, absolutely loads of cocktails and food and drink. And I like where those different knowledges intermingle. I see it as like, sort of almost like a physical cybernetic network, where if I know sort of what's in all the books a little bit, then I can activate those knowledges as I look at them, which is really helpful. Obviously, I read a lot, and it's good practice. Because it means that you can then do within your head what you might need a computer to otherwise do. And history is a very good place for inspiration, not least because if you're doing something that's done 400 years ago and reconstructing it. So I'll give you an example. Like 1694, British Admiral Edward Russell flooded a fountain in Alicante to have a party. It was done with this like brandy-based punch. It's very, very intoxicating. They had like tiny boys in little boats, little coracles. They were the midshipmen. They'd ladle out this huge, vast punch bowl to all the sailors for a party that lasted for 6 days. And I heard about this. It's like, we've got to reconstruct this. They'd have to change the little boys every 15 minutes because otherwise they'd be intoxicated by the fumes. They'd fall in. And so we then worked out how to do this for Courvoisier and flooded a building in London with cognac that you could boat across before drinking. But because we had to do that within regular health and safety limits, and we had to treat it as a food safe production facility. And what that meant was that everyone had to scrub up before they went in. They had to wear beard snoods, hair nets, aprons, the right shoe covers. And suddenly, because we were having to create this spectacle within the confines of contemporary health and safety, it created a whole ritual around it that led to this experience that's quite deep and rich. The reason that's important is, like, if you're looking for inspiration from history, a couple of things happen. You have to do it differently because regulations, technologies, resources, and materials are very, very different. So it takes it to a different place. The second thing is, the people that did it the first time 400 years ago are going to worry about you plagiarizing them. They're dead. The third thing is, the things that dilated the eyes, dilated the pupils, but delighted people 400 years ago. We're not that different. We think we are. We really aren't. The things that we get excited about are pretty similar. And if something's remarkable enough to be talked about for 400 years, it's probably remarkable enough to stage now. As long as it's not hurting anyone. This is all delight.
Wow, that's a great framework to think about finding ideas. It's first of all, it's limitless. History goes as far as we can read in one lifetime, and definitely there are so many sources that we can all find inspiration from. So how do you translate all these ideas? I heard you have a very systematic approach that involves a spreadsheet with ideas. So can you tell more? How do you go from all these wild and wonderful ideas you and your team has to actually something that the clients might need or want to actually execute?
Well, and I tend to think about it as like any client brief we've already been working on for many years before the brief comes in. So we have like deep wells of ideas that we're generating all the time. We do a lot of internal imagining of whatever we'd like to do, and then we try and make it reality. We call it, it's rather cringe in terms of what we call it. It's called the creative jamboree. It's like the Boy Scouts or something, like having a powwow. But it means that there are files and files and files of ideas for days that we can tap into. And the idea is to try and make it reality. It's no good to anyone if it just stays in a spreadsheet. Who cares? But it does mean that when we get briefs in, we've already started thinking about them, and sometimes it's terrifying. There's a project up in the Gulf called Food Sphere. It's a food edutainment center. It's huge, and we were asked to design this. It's basically a museum all about food in 3 days' time. At first, the team were like staring at empty screens, going like, "How can we design a whole museum in 3 days?" I was like, "No, trust yourself. You've been working on this forever. You're an expert. Write out what you want. Let's draw on what we all know how to deliver." And then, sure enough, at the end of 3 days, there's a total museum, and it's now been built a year later. So it's you've already been working on the thing, and you can trust that. And I guess the second bit is because we now work as a creative studio with many big brands or museums or cultural centres or governments, they need to trust to know where they are in the process. So we tend to use the REBA phases, so the 6 main REBA phases that architects would use to design a building. But I think when you speak to lots of different, and I've seen on this call, you've got lots of people from strategists to 3D artists, design directors, trend hunters. You've got lots of people from different disciplines, and I think a lot of the phases that you go through are pretty universal in terms of like research, expanding out, interrogating the question, refining it down, expanding out the details, coming it down. Double diamond approach to creativity.
Oh, this is so brilliant. And I love that you kind of touched on many interesting themes when you answering this question, which is one about like this collaborative approach to ideas where everyone kind of comes together to put ideas forward, but also your personal encouragement of people not being scared of approaching something new that seems like too ambiguous and too big. And I feel like that is a very common problem for creatives of like this first step to start, because when there is a big unknown, it feels like almost impossible to achieve it. And as soon as you start putting at least something, I mean, writers use kind of free writing as a technique of like just writing anything that comes to their mind to get over this block. And I suppose you can use sketching or anything else as a visual creative to get over the block. So what are other things that you kind of do in the studio to start this process when maybe people are unsure or scared, or the process is not gelling yet to some sort of flow? What would you do?
Well, I think one of the things I find personally debilitating is the spew of social media, because people are doing such amazing work everywhere. How do you get up to that very high level? So far more helpful than that is actually we have workshops here, so we do a lot of like physical making and doing, and that in itself releases a bunch of endorphins. It also invokes the IKEA effect. So if you make something, you believe it to be much better than it might actually be, because you're like, I made this thing. So at least give you that confidence with it. You only need to be confident about it for a little bit to get it out there. So if you can be confident about it, that I on a personal level, I try and get up in the morning. I try and write a concept about something. I try and do some drawing. I try and read and see some things before I start work. But well, I was going to say, very lucky I don't have kids. But a lot of as we've grown up, the studio's aged. Many more people, have families which are their own sources of inspiration as well. So I have to, I don't get good ideas from 6-year-olds. So I need to generate them myself.
Love it. So you get all these wonderful pots of ideas within the studio. Where do you put them? Do you use any tools? I don't know, interactive boards, mirror boards, Figmas of the world to put it? Is it the physical wall that people put the ideas? Where do you pull it all together? And then what do you do with them next? Because another thing about the ideas is, how do you judge if the idea is good? So what constitutes a good idea? How do you create a selection of these ideas after everyone kind of chimes in with their thoughts?
Well, it depends what the output is and what the brief is. Ideas are stored in Word files and Excel. Cool. Sometimes people want to come and film at the studio. They're like, it's going to be so crazy what we'll see. You're like, I spend most of my time in meetings and writing stuff and on phone calls. That's like, it's kind of the reality. And then of course, there are chefs, there are makers as well, which is a lot more exciting. But like meetings can be like exciting tools. Like, one of the best like dance shows I saw over the last few years was like Crystal Pite's Assembly Hall. And like in it's like people dance an AGM, and they dance the minutes, and there's the note taker, there's the secretary, there's the treasurer. And really what happens between the people, that space, the sort of third brain emerges, and it's magnificent what we can create together through the process of an AGM, which can be quite dry. But yeah, I think you've asked a really good question about like how do you judge a good idea? And for me, on a creative level, good ideas are ones that are very easy to communicate verbally. They're also very easy to communicate visually. So and we use this as a framework. So like for me, it's like doing a project like we did in 2022 called Lava Banquet. Lava Banquet, we all understand what it is. We heated up rock, we turned it into lava, we poured it out, we cooked with it. It's really hot. It looks, when you look into the furnace, it looks like you're staring to the center of the sun. It's like your face feels like it's going to blister because it's so hot. It's really like visceral. And for anyone that's attending, they're able to take great photos. They're able to like share it. It's if someone says, "Hey, I've got tickets to the Lava Banquet tomorrow. Do you want to come?" You might cancel your other plans. It's pretty good. And then the other way we judge things is financial. So that are we able to make money from it? And there's no problem about making money. If you're good at ideas and being good at creative ideas, you can use your great ideas to make money. Go for it. So that's one of our evaluation strategy. Then we also think about like, what is the legacy? And that's more amorphous. That could be like considering, well, how's what we're doing sustainable? What's the impact of it? Do we need to buy everything, make everything to build a massive installation bespoke? What happens afterwards? Could we do it better just through hiring components off event hire companies? Also, what like legacy can be. A lot of the reason we do this sort of thing is because like someone asks you what you're up to, and you get a great story to tell. That's okay. It's good stories to tell in the pub with your colleagues, and to have lived through it is very valuable. It's an important driver, hopefully.
And at which point do you judge this kind of business/operational element of an idea? Because on one hand, you don't want to stop great ideas because they're very difficult to execute. On the other hand, you don't want to pitch anything to the client that actually has no way of becoming a reality, or will cost so much that you won't fit it into the budget. So at which stage you discard ideas or assess if the idea is even doable within the budget, time, and logistical constraints?
It's got to be right from the start. If anyone's coming up with ideas that can't be delivered, then it's a waste of everyone's time, isn't it? It's like be good at your job. So like in a formal way with ideas right at the start, phase one, we'll start putting in design risk assessments. So the process of that is like, how do we design out all risk, and part of the risk being if it's going to cost too much to do, you can't do it. So you've designed the wrong thing. Being an expert means, I think Christopher Nolan talked about it. He's like, well, the way I get all these films signed off is I deliver them on time and a bit on budget. And every other director goes over budget and takes too long, and so the budgets are huge that he's working with. I think having, you can be freer with creativity if you're able to also be professional with it as well. And I think people's models of what creativity is have been ruined by this sort of like deplorable nonsense of the 20th century that creativity resides in individual geniuses being difficult. It's ludicrous. They're just the arseholes who aren't crediting all the other people that help them make their work. Good creativity is working with a group of people, because there's no artist that's working alone. Today it's like truer than ever. All great artists you see, they're working with huge teams of model makers. They might just hand over a sketch and got the people to fund it, which is an art in itself. But acknowledge what creativity really is, and it'll get you a long way.
I could not agree more with you. I've seen it on many other sides in agency world and in-house world, where clients or even teams would would decide whether they work with a creative or not based on how easy it is to work with them, not how, creativity is part of it, but you would rather work with someone who can deliver on time and budget, is responsible, can manage their time, rather than someone who is incredibly creative but very unpredictable and difficult to work with. Especially the bigger organization becomes, I think that becomes the deciding factor. So speaking of working,
you have a responsibility in the same way we talked about. We had responsibility to keeping people you're feeding not poisoned. Like, you got a responsibility to your clients to like get them a job and not fired. And when we were earlier on in our career, because it'd be the smallest agency pitching against something, and it would be the outside, and we'd be very young. I'd have clients who'd be like, Sam, I've been up all night thinking about whether I award you this. Don't get me fired. Please try really hard. I'm like, I will try so hard for you. I will never stop until it's perfect. And hopefully they don't have that. They don't have the need. They don't need to say that anymore. Thankfully, but that's due in part to the wider team who's good and care and want to do good work.
That's a good tip. And speaking of clients and how to convince them, so after you come up with all your wonderful ideas, the next big hurdle for any creative is to tell the client why this idea is the best or which idea could be possible. So how do you find the relationship with the client when you present your ideas? Is it quite easy for them to agree to anything that you present, or how do you go about making sure they don't get scared by all the wildness that you have in all your brainstorms?
I actually love this bit. I really enjoy pitching things. It's one of my favorite things. But the main thing is only creating ideas that you really like. Don't put in ideas that you're presenting that you don't want to do. Because you've got to live with it. You've got to give a portion of your life over to it. But I think if there's something that you're really excited about, like genuinely excited about, it's very easy to communicate that. And, good creativity is not working in antithesis with a client where you're at loggerheads. They want one thing, they want another. Good creativity is working out the thing that you both want. That is like good creativity. And then you're not selling it to someone, you're just agreeing. You're just immediately saying, hey, this is great. They say that's great. You both work on it together. And it's so, and if you haven't arrived at that, maybe you need to do some more work or come up with a different idea. There are lots of ways to solve the problem.
Do you usually present just one idea that you feel like will fit the best the brief that you had, or do you usually try to be more collaborative with clients, presenting in different stages and different versions?
So naively, we always used to just present one thing, and it was very straightforward. But it's quite risky, because if someone doesn't like it for whatever reason, or they've seen it before, or something else, or something you can't anticipate, that might be the opportunity. Because gone to waste. It's behind you. So now we hedge our bets by presenting a few different routes, which is okay. And like that is part of the editing process as well. Like, so that is also part of the creative process. It's trying to find something that everyone can be excited about. But because we're still doing things about, by and large, it ends up in a physical space. So, with the team that I'm working with, if they're presenting something, I'm like, I just always ask them, would you go to this? Would you do this above anything else that's happening in London? If they're not convinced that they would, then maybe we need to do some more work and try a bit harder.
And how do you not go too wild, or rather, how do you assess when you went too far? Or have you ever been too far with an idea when it kind of goes into too mad of a state? Where is this border between something being genuinely new and interesting, someone people hadn't seen before, and going towards it's like completely out of this world, and maybe not many people will resonate with it because it's so new and so different that it's just very difficult to understand?
I think if it doesn't have an impact, then maybe it's not a good idea. I think sometimes you're right. Sometimes things can be quite fresh, and they don't necessarily have the impact you would anticipate because they're almost invisible to people. Made things like, let's do it in 2014. We're creating that's like, I was still living in a world where projection mapping on four walls is deemed to be an immersive experience. It's really pathetic. It's so very, very boring. We've had the cinema for for a century. Like, cinema over several screens doesn't make it anything different, particularly when the budgets for it are a fraction of what we have in cinema, and the production values are pathetic relative to the movie industry. But then in 2014, we're doing the projection map flavor organs, which change your perception of taste through cross modalities. So the sense of vision impacting vision and sound when this pipe organ is played, changing your perception of taste as you're drinking whiskey. And I think it was so wonderful and magnificent and real and based in like deep history and real musicality, and then cutting edge science. We published a scientific paper about it that got published. And then new technologies as well with projection mapping, when it was a new cultural form at the time. Ralph Lauren projected on a building, and that was a story in its own right. And it didn't get any cut through in the media. And I think it was just too weird. So, but at the end of it, the pipe organ was being packed up in a shipping container, and we were able to rescue it and find it home. And now it's in our studio, and it's delightful every day. We just did a big party where we did karaoke with it, and set the whole thing to scent as well. So you did scratch and sniff karaoke. It was so very, very joyful. Sometimes projects have unintended consequences, which can be good as well.
Yes. And how do you, first of all, do clients always agree to your amazing ideas? Do they always see what you're trying to say? You might be passionate about the idea. You present something you genuinely believe in. Do clients always see that? And if they don't, how do you turn them around, seeing what you see? And how do you convince them that this wild and wonderful thing could actually be good for their brand, for their product, for whatever they're trying to do?
If they don't see it, fuck them. No, really. Like we try really hard to like find something that they resonate with, and like ultimately, if you're working with any creative outside of your organization, like you've earned some money, like, so you're doing something that's quite good, because it's expensive to employ creatives, particularly now because of AI. Everyone's a creative. Yeah. But as a consequence of it means that with whatever's happening within that brand or organization, there's something probably really, really special with it. And you get the opportunity to rediscover that from an outsider's perspective with different tools, because, as a freelancer, you're not working with that brand. Well, as a creative studio, we're not working with that brand every day, so we're not blind to it. It's exciting for us. It's fresh. It's new. We can take different codes. So, say it's in the fashion world, we'll bring things from hospitality, or say it's in the car world, we'll bring things from food and savor.
That brings me very nicely to my next part of the conversation that I wanted to have with you about collaboration and multidisciplinary teams that you build, because you are very unique in the studio that you've created, where you have these scientists, architects, people working in hospitality and food. And I mean, it's great, but as a founder, as a manager, as a leader, you have to manage all of this wonderful team of people that are very different in the way they work, very different in the way they think, in the way they create. So what did you find personally through this journey of being a founder and being a creative leader, of how, on one hand, you can let people be their best selves in the studio, but on the other hand, allow everyone to work together?
Golly, I wouldn't say I've got it fixed in any means. The greatest challenge is, with lots of people come from different disciplines, they have very different practices. So what's important within a commercial kitchen, and what the rhythms are of that kitchen, and what the rituals and the language that you describe things is very, very different from what it'd be if you're a graphic designer or an architect or a project manager. So what we spend a lot of our time doing is trying to work out what commonalities are. I mean, there's a very international audience on this call as well, and 80% of our work is around the world. So you have similar sort of things with communication when you're working with different nationalities. Not that nationalities define character, but there's certain normative ways of working that we'd be familiar with in the Gulf versus say in Germany or America. Sometimes it makes me very nervous. I remember 2 weeks before Salon de Mobile in Milan, and we'd done about 6 months of work with a client, BMW, and then that project had been shelved. And 2 weeks before Salon de Mobile, they said they wanted to deliver something, but not any of the ideas we'd worked on. So we're starting from scratch. And I remember being on the site, which is a very prestigious site, next to some other luxury brands. And it's our British creative team and the Italian team and German team. And we were all looking at each other saying, yeah, this project can be delivered. And I was like, what we're all saying means something completely different. And, I think the German team was saying this project has to be delivered. And we were saying, we can probably deliver as the creative team, the creative ideas. And the Italian team was saying, we're based in Milan. We work with fashion people. Like, are you kidding? We can turn stuff around last minute, like no problem. And they fabricated it all beautifully. But it was an amazing moment of different work practices and values coming together to make something real. But I was quite nervous at the time. I think everyone was.
I mean, communication is such a big part of creative work and collaboration, and you're so right. Cultures or disciplines or whatever differences we have as humans make communication, it's a very difficult subject to make sure that when we say something or write something, we actually mean the same thing. And it's fascinating to find that commonality. So do you have any, I suppose,
sorry, I would recommend, if you're working in different cultures other than the one that you understand or you're used to, buying the book, The Culture Map. It's so good. It's so fantastic. And it's helped me and our team immensely, just understanding what values are within a meeting.
I 100% agree with this recommendation. I also found the book absolutely fascinating. It's a window into the whole massive world that we live in. Speaking of culture, your team and studio creative culture is very unique. You throw parties and dinners and all sorts of things and markets. I don't know. You have so many great, unusual things happening every day or every week or every month in the studio. Can you tell a bit more about the rituals or anything else that you do as a creative team, as a studio, that kind of fuels everything that you mentioned before, this inspiration, collaboration, and all the other things that are so important for you as a company?
Yeah, and like I think it's important to have like ongoing rhythms. One of the best things we do as a studio, and it's something that started in COVID, is uh at 5:45 each day, someone we gather round in person or online, and someone in the studio tells a story. Um, and, and it's just a way of ending the day. And we normally have it'll be sort of themed on different things. So at the moment we're doing ones about rules people live by. So I found out that one of my colleagues likes to wash their feet every single night before they go to bed. Um, it's, it's not a useful piece of information, but it's an interesting insight into what they might be like as a person. Um, so the very best, it like allows people to be creative and express some of their values or some of the ways that they approach or apprehend the world. Um, and it allows us to understand each other. I've worked, many people here have worked here for up to 8 years. It's a long time. I've obviously worked with Harry for 19 years, almost 20 years, and it's yeah, I'm still discovering a lot about him, and I hope he is about me. It's a great ritual. We also eat a lot together. We eat and drink a lot together. It sits at the heart of the studio. So every Wednesday we'll have a great big feast. Of course, this was all themed about Chinese New Year yesterday. Yeah, it's delightful. It's a good way to have that unstructured fun.
And does everyone come in every day? I mean, I think there is a big, obviously, conversation that seems like it doesn't end about remote, hybrid, in person. And it feels like it has new waves every year of people discussing, okay, now we figure out how to do it. So what's your approach to the whole in-person hybrid conversation?
Well, I've got strong opinions, but I also give other people the benefit of the doubt. Different people are different. It's okay. Like, yeah. I mean, I think it's helpful to work at home to be individually productive. I think if you want to be community productive, it's important to work together.
Yeah, I agree that I think there are so many different modes of learning and we should find the benefits and all of them. But it's interesting always to see how each company or studio approaches it. I wanted to talk, again, you're a founder, you have a co-founder, and it also feels like you have very different personalities, two of you. Obviously, you have different background, but also you're much more public facing and very maybe curious and in general outgoing in the way you approach the world. And from what I know about Harry, he seems like you're different part of your duo and has different characteristics. So can you tell a bit more about how do you work as two co-founders? What did you find working and not working throughout the years of this constant collaboration? Because I feel like the topic of running a company is so important, but also very difficult when you have two very different minds working in the same company. So what did you figure out about you two as co-founders?
Well, I think been friends for a long time, so we have a lot of shared experiences before even starting a company. I think generally care about each other and value one another's opinion. Now that said, our approach and our personalities is almost diametrically opposed, which is great because it's a good editing process. If we both agree on something, it means that we can go in on it wholeheartedly. If we don't, maybe stop and think about it. Maybe the problem sorts itself out. It's I love the relationship with Harry. He's fascinating person. Most of the time in the studio, I'll be having clients in, we'll be walking around, and Harry will walk past. I'll be in a brown overalls, heading to the workshop where he's working to master every single trade. He's like incredible at plumbing, at carpentry. You want to go farther into all of it because that he's interested in how process enables good creative practice, how fabrication can enable you to do things, and how you then are able to come up with better ideas at the top through your personal ability. And I think also that sort of approach has really paid off in a world with AI. I think people have stopped making a lot of things. We found like a lot of our businesses come from other creative studios that come up with ideas now and now don't know how to fabricate them, and we're able to take that problem and sort it out through this unusual combination of different expertise, which is quite fun.
And have you ever had big arguments throughout the 20 years? You must have had disagreements that, and how do you find a common ground when you really disagree on a particular topic or subject?
I mean, I would say not particularly. Like now we've worked together for so long that, almost like, I feel like we're able to like anticipate what the other one would say about your opinion, which then means you're able to solve the problem with holding them in mind already, which comes down to like good embodied communication and really sort of understanding someone and understanding what their values are. Yes, I wouldn't say this has been a problem. Harry would probably give you a very different answer. Yeah, and that's okay. That's the way we work. That's the delight of it.
I love it. And I personally think like having a co-founder is the best thing any founder can decide, or any business owner. I'm very lucky to have a co-founder as well. And I do believe like, especially in the creative industry, it's so special to have someone to share the journey with and have all sorts of debates and conversations and collaboration. So I'm delighted to hear that you have this very special relationship through the years.
Yeah, it's great. And like we still went on holiday together last month. It's like everyone actually thinks we're a romantic couple. And I'm like, no, we're not. Sometimes we'll arrive on international projects. They're like, here's your room. And you're like, yeah, can we get two? Is that okay? Yeah, it's fine. We'll be in the same room together if that's what the budget allows. It's okay. It's not a problem. But
love it.
Two's an option. That'd be great.
I agree with you. I think when you go through life together, especially 20 years, I feel like it's you start to know someone as a friend, as a business person, as a creator, so deeply that you want to share more of your time together because you feel like someone really understands you to this deepest level, which is very rare in general to find in life, people like that. But I think we are very lucky as creatives and as founders to have people like that around us. Let's pick some questions from our lovely audience. I would love to know, what is a totally wild collab that you would love to do sometime?
I mean, thank you very much for all the questions, by the way. They look absolutely banging, and also quite difficult as well in some ways, which is good. I don't always like think about like who would like to collaborate with, but also like what the concept is. So I'm obsessed with rocks. I'd love to create a geopark, so a sort of giant rock sanctuary in which we'd be able to take casts or scans of like the tops of lots of different famous mountains and put them all in one place. You could go up 7 summits in a day without the ecological impact. But yes, that's a dream. If you know someone that wants to pay for it, Evie, that would be fantastic. I would say as well, if there's someone whose work that I really admire, I'll try and think of a reason to get in touch with them. Very used to rejection or nothing coming back. I've written letters all my life. I think as writing to the Queen, age 6, to try and be in the army. I'm glad she said that I wasn't able to be a child soldier. She employs people to write back to everyone. She did. But yeah, so I still will get in touch with people whose work I'm particularly excited about. Love like getting hold of John Waters' postal address and then putting together a pack for John Waters, stuffed with like weird bits and bobs zines I'd made about vomit that I thought he might like, knowing his writing. And he said no to my request, but he did write a letter back, so that was nice.
This is so personal and so cool, and especially in the age of AI emails and text messages and everything else, to have physical letters.
Oh yeah, but come on, if someone writes you an email written by AI, you immediately put it in a bin. Like, as soon as you see that, it's just like immediate delete. Like, have a care, spend 2 minutes doing something if it's important to you. If it's not worth 2 minutes, then why should someone else spend 2 minutes on your site?
Siri is asking, how do you approach PR for your company starting out as an unknown? And how do you approach it now? Is it a big part of your operations?
So I had a background in PR. So when we started out 20 years, it was I would say a lot easier to do PR than it is now. Like, you just had some newspapers, you had to have personal relationships with the journalists, and you called them up. And if you didn't know them, you called the desk and asked to be put through to them. And you placed stories that were meaningful. And you had 2 minutes to pitch a story. And like, my greatest satisfaction was taking, say, a supplement and pitching all the journalists who are the authors of that supplement and getting into every single article in that supplement. That was like my like ultimate goal. I only achieved it like once or twice, but it's always the thing I dreamed about. Now, of course, the media landscape is incredibly fragmented. Where do you spend your time? Is it what channels are you gonna focus on? I think there are different answers for different people, and it's also, what do you want to spend your time bothering doing? It is a really important aspect of what we do, of course, because if you don't tell people about what you're doing, like, will you get commissioned? I think it's a really important bit of, like, ideally, you're at a stage where you can turn down the vast majority of work that comes your way and define other work. And in order to do that, you have to have an awful lot of people aware of what it might be that you could do for them. I think we could do much better. So there's a lot that we have to learn. Yeah, there we go.
Rosanna is asking, when a project isn't going as expected, what kind of dynamics do you use to get it flowing? And if I can add to this question, I would love to hear both sides. When it's not going as expected from the client's perspective, so on the client side, client is unhappy or something, just worried, anxious, as well as what if it's not going as expected internally? Like, how do you manage everyone's mood and aspirations and just in general to make it back on track?
So I would try and build into every project that no project will ever go as expected. A model that I use to explain that to their team, I'll draw it now, is really basic. So I don't really see that. So this is the start of the project timeline. Everyone's got hopes and dreams. Everything's rosy and it's all real dreamy. It's guaranteed that every project will end up really shit and in the doldrums here at some point along the way. And then it's down to you having a really good team who are practiced and trust each other to try and push it up here. You might not get very far. You can sometimes get there. If you work really hard and you're lucky, you can get up to here. But there will always be a point where it's here. And don't, just live with it. It's okay. And that's also the bit, those sort of crisis moments where, often you get to see what people are really like. It means that as a leader in a team, you get to really add benefit. So you get to support people. And quite often, like when we're bringing new people on board, I'm always like, sit down with them and say, look, if you're really worried about something, it's okay. We're putting on parties and events and doing marketing and branding and stuff, opening a museum. It's okay. Have a chat about it. There are people here who can help you. We can work on it together. We'll get through it. There'll be a good way. The second thing with the client is just to make them part of the process. And if you show them all the things that you're doing with care to try and resolve it, and they may also have some really good ideas because they're probably in their client position because they're an expert as well. If you do all of that and they're still fuming or they can't see it, they're probably an absolute wanker. So you may want to question whether or not you want them as a client. We're lucky that the vast majority of our clients are employed by terrific companies at vast expense. They're probably quite good at something. They've been through the process a lot. So they often have a lot to contribute, and they're very professional as well.
How do you assess if clients will be a problem? Because it does sound like it's such an important part of everything you do, this trust between you and your client. How do you make sure that you say yes to the projects that have the good team on the other side?
Well, I think it's like you meet people in the world. Do you get a good feeling quickly? I mean, it's pretty important to trust your gut. Always trust your gut, and that's the same with hiring processes, but also understanding that all of those relationships are incredibly dynamic. So the people that I've hired, decades ago are now our clients. So there's, I just was working last week in Paris, where I was employed by someone who's a senior strategy director, who was once an intern at Bompas and Parr. Um, like, actually doing the job with the giant punch bowl of booze. So, yeah, um, it's trying to be aware that over a long enough time period, you'll interact with a lot of people and things will be different.
Yeah, I feel like in the industry that we work in, which is creative and a lot to do with humans, I think understanding humans, being empathic to humans and reading humans is probably one of the most important skills, whether it is, as you said, in hiring, whether it is in working with clients. It's so important. We have a few questions about recommendations, so maybe we can do a quick round of recommendations. One is about people in food and drink. So who are the contemporary figures in food and drink who inspire you and are pushing the boundaries of food and drink design?
I mean, like actually in food and drink, I'm not looking within the circle. What I tend to do is I really like, so nothing could be worse for me than going for a multi-course tasting menu. I think it's grueling and punishing for your body. What I like is sort of the grand cuisine of like the 1920s. So looking at that. I think if you ask chefs what their favorite meal is they've had in their life, quite often it's like, well, I had a great shepherd's pie and all my family were there and it was a special occasion. We made time for each other. And it's really joyful. It's really important. So what I really like doing is taking that shepherd's pie and then putting in all the razzmatazz of a West End show around it, and that makes it. And part of the reason for that is when you get to very, very elevated food and drink, it almost becomes an abstraction. Now that said, I think there's in like the bar world where maybe 10 years ago, cocktails got really, really convoluted. They got very complicated where people would use a shorthand if it's a bit unicorn tears. To say there'd be some very obscure ingredients that are wafted around it in a complex, unnecessarily complex way. To the benefit of flavor, maybe not. I think now there's some like good rationalization between technical complexity and like lightness of service, and having that depth of knowledge, but then not wearing it too heavily. And like so I went to a new bar, Cave Delphi, in Paris last week, and it was just exceptional. So they take all their seasonal fruit, they ferment it, they distill it, they put it in bottled cocktails. They don't use any ice, which is a concept that's been around for a while, but it means that all service is very quick because they're not shaking anything; they're just pouring it. But the service is like very, very casual, even though they've done this terrific amount of work beforehand. The service is like very, very light and like gentle. As you ask for a drink, they give it to you. Like they've got fridges over the side. Like there's a sort of melee of young people there. One person goes over to the fridge, picks up a beer, opens it. Within a second, the bartender's come over and put a perfectly frosted glass next to it and walked off. And it's just like a light, noticing, very, very good service, very delicate, attention to detail, but not wanky.
I love that you mentioned attention to detail and service. I feel like it's such a undervalued part of hospitality is built on it, but in general of any experience, whether it's creative and design experience or food experience. We have one more question on recommendation from Jen. With your extensive library, any recommendations for books about human interaction, sensory design that you would say is golden?
I love this question so much. I would say the number one book that I have is Pleasures of London. And it's a total history of how people have spent their leisure time in London, condensed down into sort of 200 pages. And it goes down to that bit where the things that delight humans of yesteryear still delight humans today. And along the way, you get a lot of details on sort of the sort of sensory landscapes of different times and how you can engage with it. I think it's ours, like the spine's falling off, the cover's all frizzled up. It's got like thousands of notes in it. It's very well used.
We obviously cannot avoid questions about AI in 2026, so we have a few. how do you think AI will impact the future of physical commercial environments and brand experiences? In what ways do you think it's reshaping physical spaces and experiences?
Well, there's probably a myriad of answers, and I think they'll get some people's backs up. um, we have a studio policy on AI just to make it not complex, which is like use AI to help you do good work. Continue using your brain and all the other tools you'd use. It's a tool. I think there's something inherently about AI within creativity that's incredibly cringe. When I see creative artifacts created by AI, I'm very bored. Like I'm immediately completely bored. And that's because, the reason that, what is art for? What is creativity for? And if you look at a Tolstoyan sense, art is to help you experience emotion. And humans help. And this is Tolstoy. He discounted most of his work. He discounted a lot of Shakespeare in terms of being, is it good art? That's a useful measure of, is it actually good? Does it help you or someone else experience emotion? Tech bros going, look at what AI did and it only gets better. You're like, but it's fucking shit. It didn't make me feel anything. It just made me slightly feel a bit sad, and not in a interesting, melancholic way. Just made me go oh God, you're rubbish.
I think we're just in this interesting moment in history where it's still AI a bit novel, and therefore it still sparks some sort of curiosity. As soon as I feel like most of the world will get over the novelty of its existence, like with any technology, then I feel like we'll go back to all the other principles that we always valued, like creativity and ideas and empathy and humanity.
But I think, we talked about history, and if you look back to the sort of fin de siècle Paris, when you had from the 1860s to the 1890s, this huge impact of modernity and coming in, and as a consequence, you had this great feeling of ennui, and as a consequence of that, you had this huge flourishing of human ingenuity and creativity. A lot of fabulous poetry was created. You can see now, I thought poetry 20 years ago was why would anyone ever write a poem again? And of course, now seeing some absolutely fantastic poetry being made, and it feels very relevant. It feels very urgent. And again, just in the same way that mechanism within image making with the camera, as a consequence of it, you get impressionism. So don't just worry about AI. AI will make people so bored that they'll do other interesting things. Boredom's a really good driver for creative practice.
100% agree with you. And if we have one more follow-up question kind of in the world of AI, I suppose lots of people are, creatives especially, are anxious about what the future looks like for creativity. So how would you keep the human aspect of creativity front and center?
Well, but I think there's always, when you have new technologies, it doesn't obliterate whatever the problem is. And to use a different word, let's talk about cleaning and and washing. And if you look at the there was this idea that hoovers and washing machines were going to obliterate the need for any housework. And of course, what they didn't at all. People still needed to wash. What it changed was what the output could and should be. So you had to then be much cleaner. Your linens had to be much whiter. Maybe the rhythms of it changed a little bit. But it doesn't have. I wouldn't worry too much. I would say though that the advertising industry is pretty fucked, isn't it? It's not good time to be in advertising as a consequence of AI.
I think
then it does make you wonder. A lot of people in advertising talk about creativity, but they're also telling you about the book they're working on.
I feel like it's very interesting to see where we'll get to with AI in a few years. As you said, when there is a movement, there is anti-movement in the opposite direction. And we just came back from Silicon Valley with Future London Academy, and It's very interesting to see there how literally there are two directions. One is very much efficiency and how we can solve everything with AI. And exactly the same time, the massive investment goes into everything else we want to do and will do, because we'll get bored, because we'll have more free time. We already have too much free time with Ubers and Deliveroos and whatever we have to optimize our life. And now the work will be more efficient. We'll be bored most of our day. So TikTok and Netflix not going to solve all of our needs. So how will, is it physical experiences, theater, dinners, friends? Yeah, there is such a massive opportunity for humanity.
Well, I think the one problem with that, though, is that you have the massive appropriation through this of all of humanity's resources by a very small number of people who don't really have great ideas. They've had one big idea, which is, I want you to give me all of your money. And then they do absolute fucking nonsense with it, like spend time trying to go to space. Stop it. It's not interesting. It doesn't delight anyone. No one's going to go to space. Space is crap. Like in space, all food tastes like cardboard because your nose is so congested. And these are the people who then get to spend their resources on what culture is. It's not great.
I love that we're finishing our conversation on a rant about the future, because I do believe there is no one way we should think about the future. And definitely we need to have more debates as humans, as creatives, and as creators of the future, of where do we want it to go. And we can design it for the better. And I suppose that's what gives us as founders, as entrepreneurs, as creatives, the empowerment to actually do something, because at the end of the day, we can affect where it goes. So I wanted to finish on one last question that we ask everyone who comes on our podcast, which is a bit philosophical. If you could change one thing in the world, what would it be?
One of the things I think about a lot is what life was like before potatoes. Whenever I'm sad, the British diet before potatoes was incredibly boring and unvaried, and potatoes arrived and it became way more delicious. It's not a change, but it's like a hope. How can we find something else as delicious as potatoes that we can all eat and can be nitrogen fixing and can fix the soil? And it's out there because we've only discovered a fraction of things that are edible. And to use an example from fruits, there are 20,000 known fruits, and that's estimated that's only a quarter of the extant fruits. And think about how many fruits you're familiar with. It's so few of the 20,000 known fruits, right? So it means that we've got a lot more things that are delicious that are waiting to be discovered somewhere out there on this planet. And I hope somewhere for all of us, there's something quite as good as potatoes.
Wow. I would have never expected this answer, but I'm so loving it. And it definitely wants me to explore more in the world of fruits, vegetables, and plants and things out there in the world that we should all explore and discover for ourselves and for humanity. Thank you so much, Sam, for bringing us this experience of joy and wonder throughout this conversation. I personally learned so much about the world that you live in and also the world that we all live in. And thank you for being so generous with your ideas, with your thinking process, but also I feel like opening our worlds to so many new things none of us ever even considered or thought about. And I can see so much love that is happening from the chat towards you, because I feel like so many people could resonate with everything you're saying. And also with being real about running a company, being a founder and being a creative business owner that has to solve real problems for real clients. So really appreciate your honesty and time. Any last words, anywhere people should find you, connect with you, follow you?
I want to say thank you, everyone, for your time, and Ekaterina for being such a wonderful, inquisitive host as well. And the questions have been wicked as well. Very difficult, which is good. Because it's good to be tested. The friction's reality. All the usual places. You find us on social media. We do loads of events. In the studio, I'm trying to make it a place where there's lots of space for interaction. So we're going to shortly open up a gallery space. Come to things. Come meet us. Let's see what collides, what happens. That's the interesting thing. That's the most important thing.
And you're based in Barbican, the place to be in London. So I do feel like you're literally surrounded by creativity and have creativity at the heart of your studio. Thank you so much, Sam. Such a pleasure. And thanks everyone for staying until the end. As always, please share anything that you found wonderful, interesting, exciting, provocative, surprising during this conversation. It brings us so much joy to know what resonated with you. So please, while your thoughts are still fresh, go on LinkedIn, Instagrams, wherever you are, TikToks of the world, and tell us, what did you learn from this experience? Because you learn once by listening and you learn twice by sharing. So please share the joy of this conversation with other humans. Let us know what we should talk about next as well. Thank you so much, Sam, and thanks everyone. And as always, until next time, bye.
Cool. Thank you. Bye-bye.